Good morning. This is Dave Carlson at SEH, and we are presenting today our From Blight to Bright webinar, Financing Brownfield Redevelopment. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your time. Funding Fridays is programmed by SEH. We try to have quick, accurate information at 10 o'clock for 10 minutes, one Friday a month. We're a leading engineering consulting firm. We are the most experienced grant writing team in the Midwest. Today we're talking about brownfield funding. And the one thing about brownfield funding is it's kind of the old program, new program split. Funding used to often be based on the type of contamination. For example, there was funding if there were dry cleaning solvents in the ground or underground petroleum storage tanks. Many programs, especially in the very recent past, over the past year or two, funding is now often based on the reuse of the site. What is going to happen after the contamination is cleaned up? There is, however, one common concern or issue with all funding programs. Is there a PERP, PRP, potentially responsible party? Sometimes programs call them a viable causer. Basically, the concept is that the entity that caused the contamination, if they're known and they have the financial ability, then they should pay for the cleanup. That often has to be documented as part of the application. There are a couple of programs where it doesn't apply, and we'll talk about that. There are four major agencies in Wisconsin that fund brownfields: Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, Wisconsin Department of Administration, and the United States Environmental Protection Agency. One thing to remember is don't forget tax increment finance. You'll always have match requirements when it comes to grant programs. There's nothing as flexible as TIF. And one key option, an opportunity that we've used in multiple communities, is that you can transfer available dollars from a successful TID, one that has excess revenue, to a blight or redevelopment or environmental TID. So that's a great way of getting money into your downtown if you do have a successful tax increment finance district. First program we want to talk about is a former DNR program that got shifted to WEDC, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, called the Brownfield Site Assessment Grant. Eligible applicants include governments and redevelopment authorities. Uses of funds are pretty broad. They'll do demolition, asbestos abatement, container, has waste removal. The key item is that there has to be soil and or groundwater contamination. So this is a great project to do assessments with. It's a great program to do building demo with, but it still has to be tied back to soil or groundwater contamination. There's $150,000 per project maximum grant with a 50% match. So to get $150,000, the project would have to be a $300,000 total cost. Also at WEDC is the Brownfield program. A little bit more. You can be an industry or business along with government. Pay for investigation, remediation, monitoring, including removal of hazardous waste containers. Key issue, reuse driven. They're really focused on what are you going to do with the site afterwards. In addition, you already have to have that phase 1 and 2 completed. Maybe you paid for them with SAG. And as with SAG, there has to be a demonstrated soil or groundwater contamination issue. Real money available up to $1.25 million, although internally they're limiting that to a maximum grant of $500,000 and a 20% match, although again they're typically requiring 70% match. It is a negotiative item, and as with many things, it really is going to depend on how big the impact is, how much the need is, and how much WEDC would like to do the project. Next program is the Idle Industrial Site Redevelopment Program. Brand new program, just started last year. Governments, RDAs, CDAs, They'll do demolition and cleanup. Big money, $1 million, does require 75% match. It's an annual program. Must be for 10-acre or larger sites, and sites that have been idle for 5 years following 25 years of prior use. You do have to have a redevelopment plan. Again, it's that reuse issue. They want to know what you're going to do with the property. Last WEDC program is the Community Development Investment Grant, CDIG. It's not directly a Brownfields program. This is really focused on downtown and redevelopment projects. However, it is a good way to get some grant money into a project, a downtown project, where there is some contamination or blighted building, in particular where perhaps a business wants to expand, but the building next door is blighted. You need to get funding. You're not going to have a lot of the federal requirements, for example, with block grant. You don't have the same eligibility issues that you do with block grant. And you can do pass-through projects. So if you have a project where there's going to be redevelopment of a historic building, you can pass through those funds to the developers. So CDIG's a great brand new program, not heavily used, and they're really interested in getting some applications. DNR has a couple of programs. Ready for Reuse is a nice one. Broad eligibility, which also includes school districts. And they're really looking at hazardous substance cleanup and demolition. Even though PECFA and CERCLA, or PECFA doesn't exist anymore per se in terms of new eligibility, you cannot be PECFA eligible. They do have a maximum $250,000 grant, a minimum $250,000 loan application, and 22% match. DNR also has a really neat program. It's 100% money, Wisconsin assessment monies. If you have a closed or closing manufacturing site of less than 10 acres, you can apply. DNR will select and assign a contractor, which is either going to be AECOM, Sigma Group, or SEH. One really unique thing is you can get this money even if a causer is known. You do have to get permission to get on the site, however. All costs are paid by DNR. Again, it's only for Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects, however. Department of Administration has a Community Development Block Grant Program that got moved over from WEDC. And as part of that, you can do slum and blight elimination, typically acquisition, demolition, and rehabilitation. It's an annual competition. You have to meet minimum thresholds for distress. You can do it on a spot or single or area basis. The key item with block grant, in addition to meeting the distress criteria, is that you have to show a health, safety, and welfare benefit. Has the building been condemned? What are the issues that are leading to the site being a detriment to the community? Maximum $500,000 grant and 50% match. EPA has a number of brownfields, and to tell you the truth, it would be worth doing those 10 webinar just on that. However, they all fall into broadly the same categories. Local, regional, state governments, tribes are eligible. They'll do brownfield assessments, cleanup, revolving loans, and environmental job training. Big thing with EPA is they're really often looking for regional impact. Applications are complicated. We often have a limited time frame to complete them, 60 days. They're looking for a big impact. They do have some significant money, from $150,000 to $1 million with 20% match. So the payoff's pretty big, but you got to have a pretty big project, and you have to be willing to commit up front to a fairly substantial application. Next month is going to be the Community Development Block Grant Program. Feel free to join us. If you do have a specific project, please give me a call. David Carlson, 715-271-5062. Be happy to meet with you, talk about your project, recommend funding options, all at no cost to you. With that, I want to thank you and wish you a good day.